need to know about what has developed on the continent this past week and what we can expect in this week. So in Mali, thousands of protesters took to the streets of Bamako, including Timbuktu as well. Now, these people have heeded the call of the military against sanctions imposed on the country by ECOWAS. Also today, what we are observing is the 61st anniversary of the death of Patrice Lumumba. He was the leader of the Democratic Republic of Congo. We reflect on these events. We're joined by advocate Sipho Mantula. He joins us from the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public Information. I beg your pardon. We're also joined by Veli Mbele. He is an Afrocentric essayist. Gentlemen, let's start with the connection. Thank you very much for joining us. Advocate Mantula, it's Dudu. Can you hear me?
I can hear loud and clear, Sis Dudu, and good afternoon and Jumbo Africa to the viewers and to Brother Veli.
Thank you very much for joining us. But Veli, we'll come to you in a moment. Let's start with developments in Mali, right? So that we are seeing thousands of people heeding the call of the military tells us what really about sanctions, that people will turn on the military or in this case, turn against France.
No, definitely. But remember, Dudu, that the Bamako has been heightened by events since 2020. And what we see now coming on Friday, and as you were earlier talking about the passing of one of their longest-serving leaders, Keïta, you look at the issue of the sanctions, that it is the military leaders who are calling on two parts of the sanctions. They are calling ECOWAS sanctions as illegitimate and not humane, because now they are running out of cash. They are not having flights coming in of Mali. And secondly, the other sanctions come from the EU through France. So that's where the issue of neo-imperialistic agenda that comes from France comes through ECOWAS as a proxy now. And that's where we are finding these challenges in Mali. But it is very strange to see the citizens in support of the military, as we would have thought that they would have been anti the new military government, or they would have supported their former colonizer. And again, you are still having the presence of multinational companies in the Sahel region. So if we have to understand, the Sahel region is still the exploitation and the looting of the resources, and that's where we are finding ourselves caught up in this crisis of Mali.
Let's take a look at another story that we're keeping an eye on, the 61st anniversary of the assassination of Patrice Lumumba of the Democratic Republic of Congo. But Veli, this is where we bring you into the conversation. Much has been said about the DRC, it being the heart of Africa as well. If you sort that out, you get the rest of the continent okay. So with the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, what did that do in terms of the trajectory of that country?
Yes, thank you so much, Sis Dudu. And let me just start by saying the great Malcolm X described the great Patrice Lumumba as the greatest black person to walk the African continent, right? Here is a titan referring to another titan as one of the greats. So that gives us a sense of where we must put the great Patrice Lumumba in African history. Two, the assassination of Patrice Lumumba was essentially the assassination of the hopes and the dreams of millions of Africans globally. That is how important Patrice Lumumba was. That Patrice Lumumba was not just important for the Congo or for Africa, but he was important for African people globally. And then the third thing that it did is that his assassination also had to do with making sure that the repugnant program, which was crafted in Berlin between 1884 and 1885, that program, which was the program to not just capture Africa's resources, but also to make sure that Africans, right, continue to sit at the bottom of the human pyramid. And that is the program that people like Patrice Lumumba was opposed to. And this is why his assassination, right, was meant to undermine, right, the march of Africans towards a sovereign and free self globally. That's how important it is. And if you look at what is happening in Africa today, you must look at it in connection with the assassination of, amongst others, Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Samora Machel, Eduardo Mondlane, Malcolm X, and many others.
Let's go back to Mali. Sipho Mantula joining us for that conversation. Let's talk about the interim president, Assimi Goïta, and his rise to power. He has since termed the latest developments as regrettable, as efforts of a transitional government were ignored. Who is he? Advocate Mantula, if you can hear me there, let's talk about the rise to power of the interim president, Assimi Goïta. Unfortunately, Advocate Mantula, we have lost your connection. But Veli, I guess in closing up the conversation, so we are aware of developments that have taken place. How do we build and move forward?
Well, one of the important things is as proud African people, right, it is important that we go and excavate the history of who Patrice Lumumba is and make sure that in addition to telling our own children who this great African was, that we make sure that as African people, we do away with the colonized forms of education, which do not include figures like this great African in him. For me, that is one of the areas where we must start, right? That we must own and control, right, the education around our own history as Africans, and in particular, what we teach our children about Africa and giants like Patrice Lumumba. That is one of the things we can do to make sure that he continues to live and his work does come into fruition.
Veli Mbele and advocate Sipho Mantula, in spite of some connection challenges, thank you very much for coming through. We heard exactly what it is that you have had to say this afternoon.